Hi, and welcome to the November edition of What We've Been Reading. I'm Jennifer, and this is Kate.
And each month we always enjoy talking books with you, sharing our recent reads, so here we go.
Okay, so we're starting off today with our November read-along book, which was St. Jeromes Tears from Sophia Institute Press.
And this one was very unique. Not quite sure what to think about it still. There were definitely pros and cons to this one.
Yeah, so on the pro side, this book has 7 letters written by the great St. Jerome himself, Doctor of the Church. He wrote these back in the 300s, so it's pretty awesome that we can just sit down and read these letters that he wrote.
So they are a great snapshot of his personality and really bring him to life. He was a loving and caring friend and a great writer, and his words of comfort and advice are beautiful.
So that's all great, but on the con side, these are all letters of consolation written to people whose friends or loved ones have died, so it just doesn't make for the most cheerful reading. That's all I'm saying.
Basically, these are really what nowadays would be the funeral eulogies, the speech at the funeral taken and written down in this book.
So that's very different from nowadays. Like, we don't usually take the eulogy and write it down and mail it out to people. So we thought this was a little bit hard to relate to at times because honestly, we don't know these people, we don't know anything about them, and we only get a few pages on each one to figure it all out. So while we thought the book was really cool, St. Jerome, his letters, we also thought it was a bit of a slog because again, we don't know these people.
But we are glad that we read it. It is not something we would have ever picked up on our own. And as we always say, it's good to read outside of your comfort zone. If you hear thumping in the background, that's the parochial vicar. His balloon toy went under the couch, and that's very distressing. So now we're just gonna, okay. Did you have to move the tripod? All right, so for my reading in November, it honestly hasn't been much. Last month, I was focused on Aurora Rising by Alistair Reynolds, this big, like 500-page book, and I did finish it, just as a little update, and I did enjoy it. I gave it 4 stars overall, and I would love to read more of his writing. But this book was the last book on my physical TBR, so I didn't really have a solid place to step after finishing this book. So I haven't really finished anything else in the month of November. I've tried to reread a couple of books and that didn't work out, and now I'm just slowly working on another book. But as for completing anything, that hasn't happened this month. So I don't really have a lot to talk about, but I just wanted to honestly update you because I'm sure a lot of you can relate to the sort of just probing around and trying to find something to read and this not working out and that not working out. So hopefully next month I will have solidly some books to talk about with you, but this is what happened in November and I just wanted to share that.
So that is our update on Kate. You know, we always try to keep it real here at our channel, and that is just real life at the moment. But now moving on to my first book, which is In My Father's House by Corrie ten Boom, who also wrote The Hiding Place, which is that wonderful story of how she and her family helped to hide Jewish refugees in their own home during World War II. Now, I knew that she wrote sequels to The Hiding Place, but I didn't realize until recently that she also wrote a prequel, which is In My Father's House. And this one tells the story of her growing up in Holland in the 1920s and 30s, how she became a watchmaker, all the volunteer activities she did. She was very active in helping teenage girls in her hometown of Haarlem, and she started a lot of clubs, which eventually became the Girl Guide Club of Holland. So of course she tells all this with her usual warmth and humor. One of my favorite stories from the book is the description she gives of a battle between the town officials of Haarlem and this crazy old spinster lady lady who lived there who had all these wacky, crazy ideas. She was very outspoken and very energetic, and she was always wanting them to try something new, and they just didn't know what to do with her. And that lady's name was Corrie ten Boom. I listened to this book on Hoopla, and it was a delightful book, 5 out of 5 stars for me. I did learn something new though that was a little bit embarrassing. I realized I have been pronouncing the name of Corrie's house wrong my entire life. It's spelled B-E-J-E, but it's pronounced Beja. So the hiding place is called the Beja, not what I was calling it before, which I will not say on video on YouTube. So anyway, again, if you like Corrie ten Boom, if you're a fan of The Hiding Place, this is a don't miss book. My next book is book number 5 in the Harwood mystery series by Anthony Colink, and that is Murder at Penwood Manor. So we've been reading this series for years, and it's always a lot of fun when the next one comes out. So in this one, the main character, Zan, is called in to help solve the mystery of the murder of the village blacksmith named Roger. Now, he is not a favorite of anyone, and there are several legitimate suspects. A lot of people could have killed Roger, including a returning crusader who is suffering from post-traumatic stress syndrome. So in this one, we have all of our favorite characters. We have brother Andrew, who is now father Andrew. We have Zan's good friend Lucy, and we also have the ever-faithful sister Regina. And it's really fun throughout this series to watch them all grow and change. Recently, I had a Catholic elementary school librarian contact me and ask me if I knew of any good, spooky, scary books for her older elementary students, because they like a good scare, but a lot of the scary books on the market for that age group are just not good. So if you are in a similar situation, just look to the Harwood mystery series. It's got everything you need, a good scare, and it's all grounded in the Catholic faith, so no worries. My only heads up about book number 5 is that it does cover sensitive topics, of course, murder, but also attempted suicide, so just heads up about that. This one also ends with a pretty big cliffhanger, so we can't wait to see where all the characters wind up next. So I did a lot of heavy reading in November. I read St. Jerome's Tears, and I also read a book about the holy souls in purgatory. So about mid-month, I was kind of really wanting something a little bit lighter and more maybe fun to read. So I looked around on Hoopla, and I found this book, We Bought a Zoo by Benjamin Mee. This is a true story of how his family just up and bought the Dartmoor Zoological Park in England in the early 2000s. So if you ever thought, hey, wouldn't it be cool to buy a zoo and live there and run it, then this book is for you, because the author walks you through the entire process. So he talks about what it was like going through all the inspections, the phone calls, the lawyers, the buyers, the sellers, walking through the park the very first night when they owned it. It's just really cool. Having said that though, this is a very real world book. Of course, it's a true story with real world issues. In the process of buying and starting to restore the zoo, Benjamin's wife, Catherine, is diagnosed and ultimately dies of a rare type of brain cancer. So that was really sad. And then also the author goes into the dynamics of living and working with exotic animals. Everything from what they eat, like how do you get the food to feed the carnivores? How is it processed, to the medical care that these wild animals need. So if you're squeamish, this might not be the best book for you, but I loved it, of course, because I'm a vet, so animals, that's my field. I thought it was fascinating. There is some language in this book, so watch out for that. There's not a lot, and it's mostly just the author recording what different people said. Like I asked Joe about this, and this is Joe's typical response. So heads up. So for that reason, and because of like the blood and the medical procedures and things like that, I would say this is probably a book for older kids and adults. This book was also made into a very successful and popular movie in 2012, also called We Bought a Zoo. So if you like the book, which I did a lot, then you can check that out, which I also plan to do. And finally, my last book was a really fun, quick read by Jean Fritz called Homesick My Own Story. Now, many of you might recognize Jean Fritz as the wonderful children's writer. She wrote lots of biographies of famous people like George Washington's Breakfast. We love her books here, but this one is actually her own story of what it was like to be born and live in China during the 1920s. She was born in Hankow and lived there the first 10 years of her life until the Communist Revolution started brewing, and that forced her family out. So it is a fascinating look at life in China during that time period, told through the eyes of a 10-year-old child with all of Jean's signature humor. Now, I've read some people in the reviews who said, oh, this is not very politically correct. Well, okay, maybe not in places, but that did not stop me from enjoying it tremendously. I think this one would be a really great addition to a homeschool history class about China or about the Communist Revolution. I definitely enjoyed it, and I give it 4 out of 5 stars. Okay, so that was our November reading, and now it is on to December.
So as always, let us know down in the comments what you've been reading and if you have any great suggestions for us.
If you've read about St. Jerome, we would love to hear your opinion of this book. But as always, we hope you enjoyed the video and we thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time. Bye.